The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to the Timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast. My name is Mike, here with Sam. How you doing?
Hey, man. Not as depressed as I think I anticipated. We were just having a little conversation before we got on. I'm happy to be back. This is my first main feed appearance since, I guess, 2 weeks ago. So another shout out to David Nash. Yeah, since last year. So another shout out. Since we did our New Year's resolutions, shout out to David Nash for filling in for me last week while I was sick. And since then, I mean, the people who are, super in tune with us, they've heard a Patreon episode. They've heard 3 or 4 different playback streams that we've done over the past week. So there's been no shortage of content coming from us. But yeah, obviously, it's a yearly tradition for us where January comes around now and we have to talk about how the Suns suck.
A year ago today, it's funny, this is how I was going to start with this podcast. A year ago today, literally today, the same day that we were releasing this podcast, a year ago, we released a podcast titled The Sun Exploded. And the description of that podcast is the Suns are faced with an existential crisis about how to handle the rest of the season if they continue to play like they are. And then we have a conversation on that podcast where we pitch the idea of tanking for Wembanyama for the rest of that season because their record, I don't even know what their record was at that time.
I know what it was because I had to go back and look. It was 20-21
so
this time last year. So even
almost
worse.
The same, basically.
But even worse, we are above 500. We are barely treading water, but we're 19-18 right now as of the day of recording this. The team was 20-21 this time last year. And yeah, we were talking about tanking. Not a viable option anymore, I'm afraid.
No, that there's something like that's like a bummer about that, right? Where you could shift and, if somebody got hurt, of course, you could just lose like what the Grizzlies are probably going to do at this point, where Ja Morant's out the rest of the season. They can just now shift their focus on trying to get as high of a draft pick as possible. Suns don't really have that option, which sucks, but it's also kind of, in some ways, freeing in a way where you could just eliminate that option entirely. And now, from the perspective of people like us who are talking about the team, just focus on what they could do to potentially fix what's going wrong. And it is funny to talk about. I do feel like in some ways, if you were to like parachute in, not be a Suns fan, right? And you're like parachuting in to listen to this one podcast, or even just like see what Suns fans are talking about online for the past few days, you would think we were 10 games under 500 in some ways. They are above 500, technically, and I don't know how long that's going to last. They do have Lakers and Trailblazers in the next 2 games, teams that they have lost to this season already and could be under 500 by the end of that. But, I do think that you kind of have to be involved with every single one of these games to really understand the sort of pain that the last few games have caused for Suns fans, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's that difficult to parachute in and kind of understand the function of expectations conversation that we've sort of been having all along. This is just what happens when you go all in. And so now we're all in. This is the core of the team. We could have the Frank Vogel conversation again. Is Frank Vogel going to survive this season? I still think he is. But honestly, regardless of what happens with Frank Vogel, Kevin Durant, Bradley, they can't trade Bradley Beal. They just can't. No one wants him. And they can't they're not going to trade Kevin Durant, right? So this is the core of this team, and Devin Booker, of course, as well, for not just this season, but for the next few years. This is not just a 1-year window that we're talking about. Now, you could maybe argue that the window is dwindling every year as our guys get even older, but this is the core for the next few years, and we just have to figure it out and do the best we can with it. But, of course, people are going to be upset and disappointed at kind of the results that we've seen so far, lack of continuity and all that stuff aside.
Do you know what the Nets record was under Steve Nash? Do you want to try and venture a guess as to what that was? Overall, I'll tell you overall.
You mean
for about 2 seasons? Steve Nash is the coach of the Brooklyn Nets. Yeah.
Yeah,
basically 2 seasons.
It was over 500, right?
94-67.
Wow.
Doesn't that kind of win percentage sound pretty great right now? I think he was fired after the Nets went 2-5. So 7 games is all he was given at the beginning of that season, and Steve Nash was fired. But overall, I think leading them to win basically, 2/3 of their games. That sounds pretty great. But for the Suns, they're just hovering around 500 and a place that they've been. Like a month now? That's basically where it's been, or maybe the whole season in some ways. They've been basically a 500 team.
Season and a half at this point. I mean, we went 45-37 last year too. We weren't significantly far away from 500 at any point in that year, except maybe the very beginning of last season. I do recall we started like 16-8 or something before the sun exploded, and we ended up recording that podcast last year.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to talk about, and this is going to be an episode where Sam and I separately pulled a bunch of stats. We're going to go over those stats together and just talk about how they apply to the team. But just from like a general perspective, I think the thing that's sort of bummed me out the most out of their recent play is just to the extent that Devin Booker has not been himself. And it's funny because you look at a lot of the on-off stats, and I'll talk about some of them. They play the best when he's on the floor. But we've seen so much of him over the past few seasons, and I would say that the standard that he has set for himself, he's been playing below that standard for 10, 15 games now, offensively and defensively. At times you see it, and I think overall it's just been below that. And that's been a bummer, I think, because that's the one thing you can count on for this team is he's the most consistent player on the team, and that, I think, is just not true anymore, at least as of recently.
KD is the most consistent player on the team at this point. That being said, I pulled some Booker stats too, and kind of once we get into it, I don't know, I kind of feel like it says a lot about where our expectations are for Devin Booker, especially after last year's playoff run, because all right, I'm just going to burn one of my stats now. Booker,
let's just go right into it, yeah.
Booker's last 10 games, he's averaging 22.9 points, 7.1 assists, 2.9 turnovers, so pretty good assist-to-turnover ratio as he's been all season. 49 from the field, 37 from deep, 81 from the free throw line. I think there's a lot that we can talk about with the Devin Booker point guard experiment and kind of trying to tap into why fans are so frustrated. Ultimately, I think the main reason they're frustrated is because we're losing games and he is playing point guard, and so he's catching a lot of that blame. Look, I think the pace with Book as point guard is definitely an issue we've talked about in the past. We can continue to talk about it. I think his defense for a while now has been certainly below the level of what we saw in the playoffs last year and below the level of what we should reasonably be able to expect of him. Yeah. In spite of all that, we're talking about this 10-game stretch as maybe the worst we've seen Devin Booker play in years or whatever, and he's given you 23-7, good assist-turnover ratio on good shooting efficiency. If that's the baseline for Devin Booker, I don't think things are as dire as a lot of people would have you seem, would make it seem, right? 49 from the field, 37 from deep. I certainly wish he would take even more threes. I think he is doing a better job of it over just the past handful of games. I want him to continue to tap into that pull-up three-point shooting game. But, there are some things that are not working in terms of developing a true identity and chemistry with the other members of this big three. But he's not just going out there and, dropping a turd on the court every game like some people would make it seem,
it's
right? It's
not like the Zach LaVine games from earlier this season or anything like that, right?
No, not at all.
No, it's very true. And I think it's the standards that he set for himself ultimately. And I think that's why it's difficult to really cope with. As much as we're talking about this point guard thing as an experiment this year, it's as soon as KD got to the team, this is what it was. The 8 games they played in the regular season, the entirety of the playoffs when Devin Booker was on the floor, he was the main ball handler. We saw it already. And, you just want to see a little bit better play from all of them. And I'll go over one of my stats right now, too, as well, just to really talk about that. But the starting lineup that we've seen, at least the last game and a few games ago, of Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Grayson Allen, and Yusuf Nurkic, they've only played 70 minutes together so far this season. And they have a plus 12.3 net rating, 127.2 offensive rating, 114.9 defensive rating. A rating on offense and defense that would put them as one of the best teams in the league. Also, that net rating, obviously very good.
Defense would be about, average, a little bit below average.
Mediocre, yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about, how just Grayson in particular has become the guy who has to take on some of the most challenging defensive assignments in the past several games. It's becoming really funny, honestly, on a game-to-game basis, just watching Grayson have to go up against, guys like 4 inches taller than him or just like the elite perimeter players of the other team. So the defense, given the personnel, is about where you'd expect. But a 127, 128 offensive rating with those guys, it's clear this is another one of my stats, right? So it's not surprising to me that we both had this. The starting lineup has figured it out offensively. They have. Mm-hmm. They also rank in the 85th percentile of all lineups in the NBA. This is per Cleaning the Glass in effective field goal percentage. Here's a fun one. They rank 98th percentile among all NBA lineups in turnover rate. They are not turning the ball over. And again, this is a small sample of games.
70 minutes.
They're not turning the ball over, and that's with Devin Booker as point guard, and with Bradley Beal also as the secondary ball handler.
Yeah,
turnovers are not an issue for the starting lineup. The problem is that starting lineup gets to play 8 to 10 minutes together per game, is what we're seeing, and they effectively have really struggled. I think we're at the point in the season we can identify 6 players on this team who are good. It's the starting 5 plus Eric Gordon.
Yeah.
Maybe Josh Okogie deserves a shout as he should get regular minutes. I think he's been really good at times. Obviously, we know what his offensive limitations are. Other than that, there's basically no one you can trust. There are guys I like more than others. I like Chimezie Metu. I still don't think you can trust him every game. I think Frank Vogel is showing that he doesn't trust him every game, especially recently. So the starting lineup's good. The other combinations and permutations of players that we're throwing out there in the second and third quarters, and especially the fourth quarter, obviously, we haven't figured it out. There's no consistent identity.
And to be frank, the 12.3 net rating, I wasn't able to look at it by quarter, but this starting lineup has been really good, and they're probably still really bad in the fourth quarter when they played together. They're just falling apart at times, and sometimes that starts with a run while other guys are on the floor, and then once they're all in, it's already all unraveling, and it continues to unravel. And we'll talk about the fourth quarters in just a second, but I do think they're it's sort of, you're looking for signs of life, if you will, to quote Arcade Fire, but and you do see them sometimes. You do see them sometimes with this team, but as soon as somebody else comes onto the floor outside of those guys, it's just been really bad. And I think this is sort of the trouble and what makes it so difficult to be Frank Vogel in the situation that they're in currently. It's that trying to find the right levers to pull on a night-to-night basis is really difficult, because some nights it is Metu, some nights it's not.
Some nights it's really not.
And at the beginning of the season, some nights it was Eubanks.
And I'll tell you what,
it just never is.
It's never Eubanks. But he had one good game against maybe the Grizzlies the other night, that was. But, it's basically never Eubanks. I'll tell you who it never, ever is. Be. It's never Keita Bates-Diop, who should never play more than 10 or 15 minutes in a game again, if we can help it. Even Nazir Little, who I'm not crazy about either, when he finally comes back, needs to play over Keita Bates-Diop. And Utah's even worse. They're just, the wing depth is so bad. Anyone who is critiquing Frank, for sure, we can have conversations about Frank Vogel and how we're disappointed. I think we're going to talk about this team's struggles in the fourth quarter, and there's no way to interpret their fourth quarter struggles in a way that isn't somewhat an indictment on the coaching staff. However, if you are coming after Frank Vogel for his rotations in particular, just look at the goddamn roster. Like, what do you want him to do? Look at the abject failure that Keita Bates-Diop, Yuta Watanabe, Drew Eubanks, all these guys have been. That's not on Frank Vogel. It just can't be.
And even as excited as we've been about Bowl, I am reminded of being excited about. There were people asking for Eubanks to start and close games at the beginning of the season because there was a stretch where he was good. You just don't know how long any of these guys playing well is going to last. And maybe you could say that them playing badly is a result of the coaching staff's decisions as well. I'm just not really sure because they're put in positions to do what this team needs them to do, often they are incapable of doing it. So, what we want, how could that be Frank Vogel's fault? It's really a James Jones thing.
What we want Keita Bates-Diop and Drew Eubanks and guys like that to do is really simple. Roll hard to the basket and catch a couple lobs in the case of Drew Eubanks. They're not even asking him to do a lot of the connective stuff. It would be great if he could do the connective stuff in the middle of the floor that Nurkic can do. He can't, so we've already given up on that, and we're just asking him to be a basic roll man. In the case of Keita Bates-Diop, sit in the corner and make a three. He is incapable of doing that. He is simply incapable. So, and just not an impactful player on the defensive end either, unlike a player like Josh Okogie who continues to earn minutes over him. So, again, what are you asking those guys tangibly to do? Or what are you asking Frank Vogel to do more of where he could, motivate those bench players to play better? I just don't see it. I think there is a real leadership problem on this team that starts from the top. We could talk about that with regard to Frank Vogel, but also with Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. Yeah. But, there's only so much that could be done. There's only so much complaining we could do about the fact that our minimum contract players, ultimately, we wanted them to be better than minimum contract players. In the case of Eric Gordon, he's the one example of a player who is. The rest of them are minimum contract players. They just are.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's sort of... trying to find the right guys who play well 25% of the time on any given night. That's kind of what you're looking for. And that's difficult to solve. I described it on Discord as if you're on death row and you're just deciding how you want to die, guillotine or the electric chair. Like, it's not like you're making these decisions really trying to figure out a way to live here.
I would for sure take guillotine, I think, in that scenario, for the record.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I don't know. Let's go on to another one. Do you want to talk? I'll give you a choice here. Or actually, no. It's your turn to go. So you can go ahead and pick where you want to go with it.
I've already burned two of mine.
Okay,
so
perfect. So I'll give you a choice then.
Okay.
Do you want to do a fourth quarter talk, or do you want me to give something that you could say is positive?
I've got fourth quarter talk as well. So let's go to that next or after. Let's do the positive thing first. Whatever we could cling on to that's positive, let's try and inject a little bit of that into this conversation.
I think you could make the case, and I'm not necessarily making it, but I think you could make the case that Grayson Allen is having the best three-point shooting season in Suns history.
Oh, whoa, okay. Have you looked into the data to support that? That's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
At least 5 attempts per game, which is what eliminates Kevin Durant. That's not even a high mark, but it is high for the Suns because they haven't had a lot of three-point launchers in their history. But at least 5 attempts per game, at least 30 games played. This is what I looked at. So at least 5 attempts per game, at least 30 games played. The number one in three-point percentage. Now, of course, he has to sustain it over the course of a season in order to actually be gifted this title here. But the number one is Grayson Allen with 47.2. The next closest is Raja Bell, who did it over the course of a 79 games played season, and that was 44.2. Let me read you the top 10 of these guys just to give the full context. Grayson Allen this year.
Only guys who have taken at least 5.
At least 5 attempts per game. Because I thought it was important to add some level of volume. And Grayson Allen's
that's
at 5.5.
for sure. You know who immediately came to mind, why I bring that up, though, is who immediately came to mind for me is 2005 Joe Johnson. The season, before he broke his face in that playoff run. I guess probably didn't meet that threshold for 5 3-point attempts per game. But I'm pretty sure I recall him shooting like 48% that season.
Like
something
really high.
Something ridiculous.
Yeah, he didn't meet this criteria. Kevin Durant, of course, would be, I think, above. They're going back and forth, those two guys, a little bit. I think Kevin Durant would be above Grayson Allen right now in just raw three-point percentage, but is only taking 4.5 a game. Okay, number 1, Grayson Allen this year. Number 2, Raja Bell, 05-06. Number 3, Leandro Barbosa, 06-07.
Wow.
The year that he won Sixth Man of the Year, I believe. And also, I mean, one of the most efficient bench scoring seasons by any player in the history of the NBA. And I have stats to back that up, not with
and
me. And
also a strangely disliked player by some people in our Discord. I'm not going to name
5.5,
names,
exactly the same amount of 3-point attempts as Grayson Allen that year. Because he would just run. If he can get a layup, he'd go to a layup. If he could run to the corner to shoot a 3, that's what he would do that season. Number 4.
Wait, real quick. I'm sorry. Should Bradley Beal just... There have been people yesterday in my Twitter replies saying, just make Bradley Beal the sixth man. I don't agree with that at all, for the record, but as a joke, half half serious, should Bradley Beal just model his game after Leandro Barbosa? Is that who Bradley Beal should be now?
Yeah. I don't know, because I'm not convinced the 3-point shot. I don't know. Maybe he needs to take mid-range shots to be successful.
We'll talk about that.
Grayson Allen, Raja Bell, Leandro Barbosa, top 3. Number 4, Cameron Johnson in 21-22, shot 42.5% on 5.9 attempts. Another really, really great season. Raja Bell, again. He's number 2 and number 5, and he appears, spoiler alerts, one more time. 41%, 41.3 on 6.4 attempts per game. One of the best, I think, on this list. Wesley Person, this is the only one pre-2000.
That is a throwback.
5. Yeah. And this is 41% on 5.2 3-point attempts per game in 96-97. You can call that guy in that season he played, which he played 80 games, by the way, ahead of his time as far as how he was playing. You got Eric Gordon this year with the highest attempts, by the way, 6.6 per game, 40.5%. Raja Bell in 2007-2008, number 8. Gerald Green and Troy Daniels round out the list, shooting 40%.
Troy Daniels! Oh my God! Do you remember how much I like Troy Daniels?
Yeah, I mean, I understand why, because he understood his role really well. He was just out there to launch, and that's it. That team sucked, but he was there shooting threes.
Sucked. They sucked doo-doo. Yeah, they were horrible, dude. But there's something about Troy Daniels. I know Langston Galloway's not on that list, obviously, but he was the Troy Daniels after Troy Daniels, who I loved so much, too.
I did doing a
Damian
little
Lee,
research for this.
If he ever comes back this season, too, by the way. Same type of player.
Do you want to guess who in the on the Suns has the record for most 3-point attempts per game average over the course of a season? What player?
Most 3-point attempts per game on the Suns ever. Mm-hmm. Is it a player in the last... I'm assuming it's not Devin Booker.
Devin Booker is I think he has 2 or 3 seasons in the top 5.
Okay. Yeah, because it should be Devin Booker, right? But he just kind of refuses. Yeah. He refuses to do it. Let's see. If it's not Devin Booker, it's probably someone in the last 10 years, though, right?
It's not.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Is it Quentin Richardson?
It is.
Let's go. Guess. I'm proud of myself for that one.
It's over 8 attempts per
game.
I
am proud of myself for that one because I do remember Q Rich was not that efficient, but just chucked up 10 a game back in 2005.
35% basically, and shot over 8 a game, and just launching 3-point attempts. Really ahead of his time too, I think, in the type of play that he played, and I think he kind of exemplified that at the time. Just a guy out there to launch threes. But, by efficiency stats, Grayson Allen is having the best, I guess, technically the best 3-point shooting season in 32 games. If he sustains it, he could be number 1 in these stats, which is pretty impressive for him. And, he's playing really well, and obviously it stands out because other guys either don't shoot outside of him and Eric Gordon, or can't hit a 3 like Keita Bates-Diop, Yuta Watanabe, Chimezie Metu, Nazir Little. Everyone outside of the starting lineup, basically. But shout out to Grayson Allen. He's playing really, really well.
Grayson Allen, KD, Eric Gordon, and to a lesser extent, Devin Booker. Those 4 kind of single-handedly are just carrying our team 3-point percentage without, they're our entire 3-point percentage, our entire 3-point volume, and pretty much everyone else on the team is bad. Correct me if I'm missing anyone, but I don't think I am. Even Bradley Beal is shooting 30% from deep so far.
No, you're not wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really just those 4 guys. A couple things on Grayson. First, is up to a career-high 33 minutes per game now. obviously he played a big role on the Bucks the past 2 seasons, but he's never played, I don't think, this big a role on any team. It's up to a point where, like, Eric Gordon was gone for a couple games. He came back yesterday, so Grayson played less. But earlier this week against Miami, against Memphis, Grayson is routinely getting up there 38, 39, 40 minutes in games now, just because there's no one else we can trust, and is being thrust into a role where he has to take on the toughest defensive assignment and also ideally chuck up. In that Miami game, he hit 9 threes. He took 14 3-point attempts, so he's kind of really just carrying the 3-point volume on his back, and is being entrusted with a role where he has to play 38 to 40 minutes from Frank Vogel. That's just really critical stuff that he's doing. The second thing about Grayson is that this is direct information from our friend David Nash again. He's extension eligible, right? This is a conversation we've had with David in private. It's also a conversation he's had publicly with people on the Discord, which is why we can just talk about it openly now. The fact that Grayson is extension eligible, the fact that David actually did the exact math, and that math says that a max extension that the Suns could offer to Grayson Allen would be, I don't have it right in front of me, so forgive this is an approximation, but about 4 years, $75 million would be a max extension that the Suns could offer Grayson Allen. Do you have any thoughts on that? I know we've talked about it kind of not in the context of the pod, but I want to open up a greater conversation about Grayson Allen, because the lack of assets that we have in particular really makes this an interesting discussion as we talk about, okay, we're kind of backed into a corner here. What are our avenues for improvement going forward? I think Grayson Allen's a huge key to sort of unlocking that.
There was a lineup yesterday that the Suns played. And I'm not even mad about this lineup, for the record, but it was Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Grayson Allen, Eric Gordon, and Kevin Durant. And that's 4 shooting guards and Kevin Durant basically playing. And Kevin Durant, I think, as our friend Streaker pointed out on Twitter, plays like a shooting guard in the way that he plays. It's like 5 shooting guards out there. And, Grayson Allen is just really, really, really good within his role. And there's 2 ways you can look at what you can do with Grayson Allen. In one way, you can say he's our best trade asset even as early as this season, because he's one of the guys that's, he's outplaying what he's paid this year. So if you put him on the trade market, attach him to Nasir Little, you can try to get somebody who can maybe fit the Suns better. That's not another shooting guard. I don't know what you want to say that is. Maybe it's Dorian Finney-Smith, for example.
A big forward, I think, who can actually inject some physical. And by the way, I'm not saying that I do this. I would not trade Grayson Allen for Dorian Finney-Smith. I'll say that right now.
I understand that.
But if the idea is to get a bigger wing who can inject some physicality and some defense into this lineup, I get it. Also, just the fact that, you got to give something to get something. And Grayson Allen, quite frankly, is one of the only players on this roster who you could envision there being a market for. He is such a good shooter and is having such a good season that, of course, there would be a lot of teams lining up to be interested in his services. So that's what makes it even a conversation in the first place.
So, yes, so you're talking about if the Suns need a more balance to their talent, right, because they have Eric Gordon, then you could potentially try to shop Grayson Allen for a forward that could fit more of these lineups and allow the Suns to play a little bit bigger and have someone who can, maybe Dorian Finney-Smith, not an excellent defender, but a good defender who can guard multiple positions. It's just an example. The other option for somebody like Grayson Allen is you keep it, you ride it, you figure it out this season, try to play as well as you can with who you got, and then you extend him. Now, when you extend him, obviously you have the option to keep him, but now you can trade him for, say, a $16 million player next year, for example. He becomes a trade chip that makes a little bit more sense. The Suns don't have...
Even 2 or 3 years down the line. Like the idea could be we could extend Grayson Allen with very much the intention that he is this era's Raja Bell. Right? That for the next 2 or 3, that he will lead the Suns in 3-point percentage for the next 3 seasons. But eventually an opportunity might present itself where, it's 2026. He's making $18 million at this point because you extended him. And yes, he is going to continue to be one of the best trade chips that you have available to you.
or an important enough player that you don't trade him, right? Because
Sure.
he's developed into whatever he can be. Because, I mean, he's dramatically improved this year from last year, and maybe he can continue to improve. He's relatively young on this roster, and, maybe he's that important. But, I understand. I'll be honest, I understand both sides of that. And, part of me is just looking at this team going, they need something. And maybe that means trading Grayson because he's the only one that you can get something for, like we talked about, without attaching a pick, which the Suns don't have. So I think overall, if you plan on keeping him, you probably should extend him right now. They don't have any options in free agency to sign players above minimums. Devin Booker's extension kicks in next year. Those guys, the big three, are making like $150 million by themselves. So if you can find a way to circumvent whatever cap restrictions you're going to have in the offseason by extending the guys that you have, you should do it. So extend Grayson Allen if you can. It's just money, after all, right? He's got a lot of it. The guy that decided to make the KD trade, he's got a lot of money.
Yeah.
So he should probably make that
He made his bed and he should lie in it now. And
Exactly.
the least he could do is extend Grayson Allen because there are no other ways for us to really circumnavigate the cap, like you were saying.
I do think that you're sort of probably in a lot of ways delaying the trade until the offseason in some ways of Grayson Allen, right? So if you can find a deal that makes a lot of sense right now, you could probably just do it. And if you can't, then extend him and keep him on the team because he's one of the better players right now, and hope that you can find a better deal for him later. If not, he's a great player. Like, it's not a bad thing to have him on your team. It's just bad that the Suns have no forwards that are playing well right now, besides Kevin Durant. And that's not Grayson Allen's fault. It's just a result of the construction of the team and these guys playing badly. David talked about it. He found it interesting on the last episode when we talked about it that the guys who have the player options for next year are the guys who aren't playing very well, and the guys who don't are the ones who are playing better. Coincidence or not, it's funny to talk about. So that's Grayson Allen. You want to talk about fourth quarters?
God, do we have to?
I mean, I think we do, man.
Shout out to the people in my Twitter replies. I mentioned 20 minutes before we started recording here that we were about to do a podcast, and Lord help us is what I said. But I got multiple jokes from people in the replies just being like, you guys should make this a 3-quarter long podcast and just like give up in the fourth quarter. Just kind of check out how we're about 30 minutes in now. We could probably just end it or mail in the next 15
Give us
minutes.
15 more minutes. Yeah. And then, maybe we just cut it off, end it in the middle of a sentence or something.
All right. Can I start us off here?
Okay. Yeah. And I want to give a shout out before you even do that, though, to our friend RB on Twitter, who has a whole thread
Yes,
of
I did see
negative
that.
stats about the fourth quarter. And you can go many ways. I tried to find one that encapsulates how bad it is, but I'd like to hear yours.
Sure. So just we are the worst fourth quarter team in the NBA. We have a negative 16.1 net rating in fourth quarters. That is by far 30th. 29th would be the Miami Heat at negative 11.6. So a whole 5 points per 100 possessions better than the Suns' net rating in just the fourth quarter. Here are some other good teams that are actually struggling in fourth quarters this year, just to, I don't know, make you feel a little bit better that maybe we're not entirely alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, cope. The New Orleans Pelicans are 27th. The Dallas Mavericks are 24th. The Orlando Magic are 22nd. Basically, every other team in the NBA, especially every other good team, is going to be, though, at least roughly neutral, if not actually good, in the fourth quarter. So it's a small group of teams that are struggling, and nobody's struggling to the extent that we are struggling in the fourth. We are one of the worst fourth quarter teams in recent NBA history right now. How we got here, I don't fucking know, but I guess we have to talk about it for the next 5 or 10 minutes. So go ahead, Mike.
The Suns, I think one way to put it is the Suns would have 8 more wins if the games ended at the end of the third quarter than they have right now.
The way that RB put it in that thread, can I say my favorite one was
sure.
A negative 16 net rating, if you extrapolate that out to an 82-game season, would be a 7-win pace.
Yeah.
The way the Suns play in the fourth quarter, just the fourth quarter, is that of a 7-75 team. The worst team in NBA history.
In the first half, net rating stats, the Suns are the 6th best team in the first half. And then, of course, last in the fourth quarter. And it's indicative of everything that's happening with this team. Now, I have some more stats that maybe we'll talk about later that could provide some level of context to that. But I think there are two main reasons why it's so bad. Even just taking the Chris Paul part of it out of it, because I think a lot of people point at the wrong trade as far as reasons why the fourth quarters of this team is struggling. I think in some ways the lack of Chris Paul, it takes a lot to figure out a team without him after you've been relying so heavily on him for so long. But just taking him out of it, the first thing I would say is, the complete lack of continuity. It's a different team every 10 games or so with who's playing. And obviously that's had a really large impact on this team overall. And that, I think, the teams that have the most continuity are the teams that are probably performing the best in those stats. You talked about the Miami Heat being so low. A lot of turnover for the Miami Heat from last season to this season. They really only have two guys that are on that team playing important roles outside of maybe Duncan Robinson. But they're trying to work in a lot of different guys. Who are the other teams? The Dallas Mavericks, pretty low in that stat.
Dallas, I think you could make that case for too, for sure.
New Orleans, dramatically different roster.
New Orleans a little bit less so. I don't think they have really an excuse for how bad they've been in the fourth quarter. I haven't watched enough of their games to know exactly what their fourth quarter problem is, but that one marks me as it's a little strange.
It's a little strange, yeah. And outside of all of that, well, I will say, if New Orleans is playing with healthy Zion, that's like a new team for them too. How many games have they gotten with that? But yeah, outside of that, I think, a lot of it is just this extension of the guys who play in the starting lineup play at the beginning of the third quarter, right? They play for 8 minutes or whatever with those guys on the court. They come out and then everything falls apart until they can get those guys back in. And often it just continues to unravel because they're already in such a deep hole. So it's just the lack of good play from anyone outside of those six guys that you talked about at the beginning of this podcast. I think that's another thing that's left to blame. Beyond all of that, you do have Beal, you do have KD, you do have Devin Booker. All three of these guys could play better in those times. And a lot of the responsibility falls onto them, and that's individually and that's together. And, I think maybe I'm naive here, but I think it will get better. And I think there are reasons to believe it will get better. But up to this point, they're like you said, one of the worst fourth quarter team this season, and one of the worst we've seen in years.
Was yesterday's fourth quarter, you're going to have to remind me, was that the one where you mentioned the lineup that we had out there for like two possessions, which was just KD at center, Book at power forward, and then all the guards? That was because Nurkic was out of the game for quite a while, but then Vogel checks in Keita Bates-Diop and Josh Okogie. So basically he keeps it small, so you don't have any of the rebound. You're still at a complete size and rebounding disadvantage versus what the Clippers were doing with Zubats. But you didn't have any of the offensive advantage because you checked in two guys who couldn't shoot, who basically have to play like centers. Was that in the fourth quarter or was it in the third?
I think that was the end of the third.
Maybe that.
But around the same time. Maybe the beginning of the fourth they played as well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just the total lack of reliable combinations of lineups that we can go to in the fourth quarter. If it's not those six players that we're talking about, then we're just kind of fucked.
Yeah. I don't know. There's fixing it. There's like internal ways of fixing it, right? Like I think isolation stats, all of Booker, Beal, and KD should play better in isolation than they have this season, and they're having like lower points in isolation. Like Booker's shooting under 40% in isolation.
That's my next stat.
Beal's shooting under 40% in isolation. Booker, KD is like around 40%. So that's all bad. All three of those are bad.
It's about the mid-range stuff in particular, not just isolation. So KD's at 42% from the mid-range this season. And this is a guy who's had such a remarkably efficient season. He's shooting above 50 from the field, 47 from deep, but he's at 42% in the mid-range. He was at 56% last year. Booker is at 43.5% in the mid-range this year. Last year was at 50%. And then you look at their restricted area percentages this year and the contrast, and you see why they are still able to maintain such efficient overall shooting seasons in spite of the fact that both of these guys are struggling from the mid-range. Kevin Durant is shooting 83% in the restricted area this season. Among the best in the NBA. When he actually gets there.
His three-point shooting, yeah.
And then the incredible three-point shooting. Devin Booker is at 73% in the restricted area. So why are we still seeing this insistence upon building the offense entirely out of what has been, admittedly, their typical shot diet for the past 10 or 15 years? I get it. I know Kevin Durant likes a mid-range. I know Devin Booker likes a mid-range. But at a certain point, by far, our worst offense is coming when these guys are trying to just operate out of the mid-range. When they get to the rim, they're really good. Shooting threes, they're really good. Mid-range, they suck this year. And maybe that's just still a small sample size and it's going to stabilize at some point in the second half. Sure, whatever. But why?
I think
guess
there's one obvious reason.
This is another coaching conversation, really, is what it is. It's pulling the right levers, as you referred to it. Is there a way that we can get them to play a different brand of basketball and be a little bit more mindful of the fact that they are just not playing that well in their typical, given their typical shot diet this year? Is there a way to make them cognizant of that? Or is Kevin Durant just going to always play like Kevin Durant and Booker's always going to play like Devin Booker?
Yeah. I think one of the reasons is that they're able to get those finishing numbers really well, I think, when they're playing with the starting lineup or when they're playing with Eric Gordon out there. There's so much space. There really is a lot of space when it's those five playing. But if you have two bench guys in that are not Eric Gordon, like if you have Josh Okogie, Keita Bates-Diop, how are you getting to the rim? There's three guys there. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't know how they're going to do it. And maybe they're just going to have to grift for fouls a little bit, and we have to throw out our Ethical Hoops merch and stop selling it online because it's no longer valid. But, maybe... I don't know. They just have to find the right combination of guys to give some space.
You know who we've credited when we, in a limited sample size, but we've seen him doing it for the past 10 games, and we've given him some credit for being really good at coming off screens and turning that corner fast and just blowing through guys fast. And it's Bradley Beal. He plays basketball fundamentally differently from Devin Booker as a guard. And of course, Beal still has his own struggles. He's had late fourth quarter turnovers, and I'm not here to say that he's a better ball handler than Booker or whatever, but just that he attacks the rim in an entirely different way, which is a little bit ironic because Beal is not the finisher that Booker is. He gets to the rim better, but then he shoots about 10% worse when he actually gets there. If Booker attacked the rim consistently with the same pace and the same aggression as Bradley Beal, you would kind of have the best of both worlds. But that's just not the way he's playing. He's consistently stopping short in that sort of elbow 16, 18-foot area because it's what he's used to. It's what he did for the past 3 seasons with Chris Paul. And I don't know if there's a way that we can get them to balance it out. Or, if that's the type of thing that Kevin Young and Frank Vogel can even bring to their attention, or if it would fall on deaf ears,
I hope it changes. But also I think that those mid-range percentages could just go up, and that would make a dramatic difference as well. So there's two things that could happen there. But yes, I have more. I know we're getting a little late here, so I'm trying to move through the two more that I have.
Okay.
I have a list of stats that are related to Nurkic. These are just on-off Nurkic stats. And I wanted to do this because I just want to make the case of which this team is teetering on when Yusuf Nurkic is on the floor compared to when he's off. Because, man, are the differences dramatic. When Nurkic is on the floor, the offensive rating, 119.2. When he's off the floor, 110.1. Is that an insane on-off difference or what? Defensive rating, when he's on the floor, 112.1. Just continues to get better. When he's off the floor, 116.6. Net rating, plus 7.1 when he's on, minus 6.5 when he's off. And here's the kicker, I think. The defensive rebound rate for the team when he's on the floor, 74.4%. Already kind of bad. When he's off the floor, 65.4%.
That's horrendous. That's really horrendous.
I mean, because I think there are times he's on the floor where I'm like, man, they can't get a rebound. But when he's off the floor, they literally can't. Like, they're giving up 35% of the rebounds to the other team as offensive rebounds when he's off the floor. This team is so dependent on Jusuf Nurkic in order to play well. It's just kind of it's shocking, a little bit sad and depressing, and a little scary as he's a guy who's known for getting injured.
Yeah, for sure, that last part. And also I think it's a good reminder for people because, like, you know, like everyone else, we've had our frustrations with Nurk. Even in yesterday's game, there was a stretch where we were telling ourselves, man, we just need to start getting stops and then we're back in this game. In the third quarter, they start getting stops, and then you pointed this out. What did they do? They went to Jusuf Nurkic offensively like 3 or 4 times in a row. Bradley Beal especially being super unselfish, trying to work it into Nurkic, find the 2-on-1 pass. And he was, you know, just doing his Nurkic thing of blowing layups and
trying to get fouled when he doesn't need to.
Trying to get fouled and kind of like ruined what could have been a good offensive stretch for the Suns. So that's all frustrating. And in spite of that, he's still by far our best offensive option at center. Yeah. He just has been all season long. So we
and
need
defensive option.
And defensive option, I suppose, too. So we need to find a way to optimize him. And yes, you want to reward him on offense for doing the dirty work and grabbing rebounds and, you know, being the connective piece in the middle as well. You know, you want to make sure that he gets some shot attempts and, I don't know, maybe even occasionally exploits a mismatch, but you can't feed your way to victory. Just feeding Jusuf Nurkic on offense. We would run into the same issue that we had with DeAndre Ayton for years. By the way, this is a stat. I just want to return to the mid-range stat real quick because I forgot about this. Did you know that DeAndre Ayton is shooting better from mid-range this season than both Kevin Durant and Devin Booker?
No, I'm not surprised, though, because he was always like pretty close to them in percentage. Well, pretty close to Devin Booker in percentages. KD has had absurd mid-range shooting seasons as of late. Nobody's even close to him, but that's not that surprising to
just
me.
A little bit of
shoot 45% last year, I think.
Yeah, a little bit of vindication for DA right there.
Well, I don't know if it makes a big of a difference, but the thing about Nurkic is, I think the ideal playtime for Nurkic is sort of not Bynum. Who's the Australian center that played for Golden State? Why can't I think of his name?
Bogut.
Bogut. It's kind of Bogut-esque in rotations. Yeah, where he sort of starts with the team, plays 25, 27 minutes, right? And then they have a closing lineup that is this killer offensive closing lineup with maybe KD at center or something like that, a little bit smaller, that the Suns can unveil in the fourth quarter. Because as much as everything that you do with Nurkic works in the first through third quarter, I think there are reasons why he struggles in the fourth quarter when players are trusting him a little bit too much with the ball. Not to say that he's to blame for their fourth quarter struggles, but I think last night's game against the Clippers, for those who are listening to this before or after that game, was it kind of showed what happens when the defense converges and is really locked in on him. He's going to turn it over. He's going to try to get fouled. He can't finish in traffic. Like, he can't really be trusted in those scenarios. You have 3 players who can and should be taking those shots and can't trust him in those scenarios. So that's kind of the ideal version of them. They don't quite have that, right? Because when they put their best 5 players outside of Jusuf Nurkic on the floor, it's 4 shooting guards and KD.
Yeah,
they don't make sense.
It's 4 shooting guards and KD, and 3 of those 5 players, again, going back to the mid-range issue, just love their, like, it's great that we have spacing from Grayson Allen and Eric Gordon, but those other 3 guys love their steady diet of mid-range shots and have not figured out how to generate threes off of each other yet. Basically, you put those 5 players, Grayson Allen, Eric Gordon, and then the big 3 together on the floor, and it just seems like everything about this team was kind of designed to win in 2014, 2015. This team would have kicked ass 10 years ago. Back when they could get away with, it's okay that they don't have to come down and just shoot a 3 every possession and like really run the ball down their throats. And it's okay that Kevin Durant is playing center because there would have been unskilled centers that he's matching up against all the time. And it doesn't matter if you have a 6'9" center in spurts because the rest of the league hasn't caught up yet with these really, really big, skilled bigs who are actually 7 feet tall and can't be played off the floor. But like, that was 2014. And then Steph Curry happened, and the Warriors era happened, and the positional revolution happened in the NBA. And now everyone's caught up, And now every team has skilled bigs and every team takes 53s a game. And it just feels like there are too many elements of this current Suns team in the way that they were designed that just don't work. Like they're playing an era behind everyone else is the way that I feel recently.
Yeah.
Offensively and defensively.
Yeah, and I think they have the personnel to do more of the modern thing offensively. And I think if you're going to point at coaching, the fact that they're not taking a ton of threes still, maybe it is Kevin Young. We talked about this on Playback yesterday. Maybe it is Kevin Young that doesn't have them taking those threes. Maybe it's a Frank Vogel thing. He doesn't empower them to shoot, in some ways, too many threes just to try and even out what they're doing compared to the rest of the league. But
also,
I don't think
fact
the personnel is built in a way where they couldn't do that. I think they could.
It's twofold, right? It's the fact that, yes, on offense, they're not shooting enough threes, but also, even... Like, forget Jokic or forget Sabonis or forget some of the, or Şengün or some of the hyper skilled centers who are entering the league now. But even Zubats last night, we played KD against Zubats. And, back in 2014, that would have been Jan Mahinmi or Roy Hibbert or someone. I don't know. It would have been someone that you can just, play off the floor, right? But Zubats, they couldn't. There was nothing that they could do to neutralize the advantage there.
Well, they don't have...
because centers across the league have become so much better than they first were when Draymond Green started doing this in 2015, is my point. It's an entirely different environment.
But if KD's your best... It would be helpful, I guess, this is the way I want to put it, to have a big forward next to KD in that scenario, right? Because if KD's your best rebounder, then if they're getting extra possessions just from having the only center on the floor... then obviously they're going to benefit from that. It's funny that the Clippers are the team doing it to the Suns, right? Because the Suns did that to them in the playoffs with DeAndre in the past, I don't know, Torrey Craig, for example, if he's out there trying to fight for rebounds for the Suns because he's the other guy on the floor with that 5 instead of Eric Gordon or instead of Grayson Allen, maybe it's a little bit different because they have the ability of fighting. Not saying it would work every night, but I am saying that there would be more of a benefit to trying to go to that than if you just have a bunch of guards who are not good rebounders surrounding KD. Have we done all of yours?
I have one more. Do you have one more?
I have one more as well, yes. Go ahead.
Okay. This is kind of just a sad one now that we moved past. We had our 10 minutes of positive talk this episode. Yeah. I think we tried to not, doom the entire time. But obviously, if you're still listening, shout out to you. We're in a tough part of the season, tough stretch here, and it makes it better. We're going to be recording these podcasts regardless, but it makes it better to know that we're not entirely alone out there and that there are some masochists who will listen to these episodes. So shout out. Yeah. The Suns have one win against a good team this season. I think that might be a little bit unfair, but they have one win against a great team. Do you remember which team?
Who's that great team?
No. That great team was a mid-November win, very early season, against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Okay. I think before we even knew, and now it's fair to call the Timberwolves a great team. Like, they deserve that categorization now. But back when we beat them, we were kind of not giving them that benefit of the doubt yet. There was sort of an assumption, I think, that the Timberwolves would sink back to their usual selves. It was a very good win. To our credit, Bradley Beal did not play. Devin Booker and Kevin Durant both had 31 points in that game. On the whole, though, there are 15 teams in the NBA now that have won at least 20 games. The Suns are not among those teams, but there are 15 teams. A whole half of the league has won at least 20 games. We are 4-9 against those teams.
And I think 3 of those wins are the Magic, the Heat, and the Knicks, maybe?
We beat the Timberwolves. We beat the Magic by 5 points. We beat the Miami Heat. A good win, but without Jimmy Butler, but a good win. Also, no Kevin Durant. And, my personal highlight of the season, Devin Booker's game winner at MSG against the Knicks. That's not a lot to hang your hat on almost halfway through the season, though, if you're still trying to say that this is, that this team can hang with the best of them. 4-9, a lot of losses against, teams that are even worse than that. Like the Lakers aren't even in that group, and we've lost to them 3 times, but also multiple losses against the Clippers. We lost to the Sixers. We lost to the Nuggets. We lost to the Thunder. All the real good teams that we might have to get by at some point, we're losing to them right now. We don't have the evidence to say that we can beat them. And yes, we haven't had continuity. We are hopefully going to have more continuity going forward, but we're also going to start playing a lot more of these teams going forward. I mentioned this on the playback last night. And it's no secret to the people who've been paying attention. The Suns' schedule to close the season is really brutal. It's just absolutely brutal. We're going to be playing 50-win team after 50-win team if these teams stay on their current pace. It's going to get really hard. And right now, we don't have the evidence to say that we can beat them. I pray that changes, but that's just what it says right now.
Well, I have one last stat. I think that'll be a good place to wrap this all up. I was watching the Clippers play against the Suns yesterday and seeing, they have a new big three as well. Like, they're the other team in the NBA that has a new big three this year. So I was trying to figure out, like, what level of continuity. They've been healthy, pretty healthy all season. What level of continuity they had compared to the Suns. So I looked that up. KD, Book, and Beal have played 108 minutes together this season. If you're looking for some optimism here. Harden, Kawhi, and Paul George have played 727 minutes together so far this season. Essentially 7 times as many minutes as KD, Book, and Beal have played together this season. So as much as it's been frustrating, as much as they have struggled, there are reasons to point at that they have not yet figured it out together.
Shout out.
This is what we were expecting in December.
It's true.
But we're seeing it in January.
First of all, huge shout out to Kawhi because I didn't think he'd actually be playing all these games and these back-to-backs, and he's doing it. Yep. And thank you for the dose of copium there because I think I needed it. I think I really needed it.
Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to listen to a few voicemails before we get out of here. We'll be right back. Okay, 480-420-6553. If you'd like to give us a call and leave us a voicemail. We got a couple to listen to right now. Let's get started right away. Here we go.
Hey, fellas. My name's Keith. I live in Mesa. Suns fan for a long time listener. You guys as well. Thanks for keeping us up to date throughout the season. Nice to listen to you guys and hear that Suns talk. I was at the game last night against the Heat, watching things live. I'm there with my father-in-law and with my son, who's 9. And my father-in-law kept pointing out, hey, watch Bradley Beal during this timeout. Hey, watch Bradley Beal during this stoppage in play. And he just seems to bring a different joy to the game. Maybe he's just happy to be on the court. I'm not really sure. But it's almost a silliness that he brings, although he's very serious once, the ball's live again. But I think that could really help this team, who just has seemed a little beaten down being so early in the season. But if Beal continues to play well and he keeps this team loose, man, that can be, a little bit of an X factor for us. But that was really fun to see. He seems like a kid out there, which is fun as well. Especially when I'm watching with my kid. Hey, we don't always have to take things seriously in life. We can be awesome at our jobs and still have a good time doing it. But I think it's something to monitor with Beal. If that continues, it's going to mean good things for us. Thanks, guys. Hope you're having an awesome day and a good start to the new year. Go Suns.
Thank you, Keith. Keith sending that one after the Heat game, so wasn't quite in doomer mode as much as maybe the rest of Suns fans.
We need a little bit of positivity to start out here. I agree. Thank you, Keith, for the question. Or observation more so. I think it's interesting because what was that thing the Suns just did? That
courtside conversations. I was just thinking about that. Yeah,
the courtside conversations. Which, look, I'm going to be honest with you. They just posted this stream on their channel a couple of days ago. You can go back and watch it. It's about a 50 minute conversation between Beal, KD, and Book. I was hoping there would be a little bit more basketball talk, but I understand it's kind of like a lighthearted thing where, they're getting asked about their hobbies and all sorts of stuff. It's good for the fans in its own way. One of the things they were asked about is who's the funniest guy on the team. And there was a bit of an awkward pause. I'm not going to lie. Almost like they had to kind of
the
think
entire
about
thing was a bit of an awkward pause for the record.
Yeah.
They're doing their best. I'm not faulting
They're doing
the
their
Suns for
best.
this. Yeah.
It wasn't the smoothest conversation, if you wanted to listen to it in kind of like podcast form or whatever. It's not exactly smooth, but KD and Book agreeing that Bradley Beal is probably the funniest guy in the locker room. They said if it wasn't him, then it's Saban Lee.
Yeah, that was surprising.
Surprised me.
Yeah,
surprised
no
me.
Cam Payne, no Mikal Bridges. They're missing a guy like Beal. They really are. I actually think this was a salient point because they also talked about, I think, who keeps the spirits up at times in the locker room, and KD responded, "Definitely not me." which
I
was funny.
that.
Which was funny. And then they also said Beal in that case, and he just talked about how he likes to be the guy that does that. But the Suns need it because they're in a bummer point to the season, and they need somebody to help keep those spirits up. And David talked about it too when he was on the podcast. But we talked about him calling the defense trash after the game. I think there's something about being the guy that's willing to keep everyone's spirits up, but also be honest about how they've been playing, and the Suns just need that. I think in that game there was a little bit of, you start to understand why maybe Kevin Durant struggles as a leader on a team sometimes, or even Devin Booker. They talked about playing Call of Duty, all of them, by the way, until 4 a.m. before they have practice at noon. And it's just like, all right, guys, come on. Maybe don't even say that. I don't want to know. I mean, we had this conversation. This team is cursed with guys who play basketball or play video games until 4
Call of Duty
or
video games.
Apparently, after DeAndre Ayton,
2K, yeah.
It's probably just an NBA thing at this point.
But the thing is, like, well, it's funny because KD is not that you can't play video games when you're 35 years old. Of course you can, but it's funny to me when he talks about it because most of the NBA players who are talking about like they love playing video games until 4 a.m. are the rookie contract guys. They're not necessarily the guys who are in year 16, years like LeBron James is not doing that. I'm telling you right now. What's funny though, like Beal has this authenticity that he brings to everything that he does. And so sometimes it's a positive thing. Sometimes it's a little bit, I'm not sure we've even seen it manifest itself as a negative thing yet. It's just like, yes, he is willing to go into an interview and call the team's defense trash for what it is. Whereas you're going to get the same interview from Book or KD, and they're going to be much more guarded because that's just what we've observed from them over years and years.
They're media trained.
They're media trained, but Brad is a little bit different. He's going to be funnier and he's going to be more honest, and we're going to take it for what it is. I think on the whole, it's a good thing.
All right, let's listen to another one here.
Hey guys, love what you do. This is Daniel from Phoenix. The fourth quarter collapses. It's first off, 2 seasons ago we were, maybe last season, I don't know, it's a blur. We were incredible in the fourth quarter. Is that just a loss of Chris Paul's IQ and 12-foot jumper? It doesn't seem like that would be it, but maybe that's all it is. Or DA's killer instincts. Who knows? But I'm wondering, I'm fed up after the fourth quarters, and I'm wondering, is it possible that Vogel has some, killer playbook for the fourth quarter that he's just waiting until after the All-Star break to introduce, or waiting on, like, it's been so bad that it's ridiculous. Is it intentional? I have no idea, but I'd love your thoughts. Thanks, guys.
Thank you to Daniel for that question. I think the answer, the gist of it was that the Suns are very good in fourth quarters, right, in previous years. And is that credit go to Chris Paul mostly? As well, does Frank Vogel have any plays that he's waiting to break out?
What are Frank Vogel's secret plays?
Yeah.
Daniel, I've got some bad news for you.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, it's not intentional. God, I wish it were intentional. Wouldn't that be nice? Yes. I don't know what the benefit would be.
I don't know if it'd be nice. That would make me mad too, I think.
Yeah, I suppose so. I don't think there's a secret fourth quarter Frank Vogel playbook that's going to come in the second half of the season.
They should have used it if there is. I do think there are plays that the Suns have had that they weren't able to use until now because the skill sets of Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, and Kevin Durant just make more sense when they're all together. And they're trying those plays out. There's a little bit of confusion and not knowing the quite right place to be or pace to play at or place to pass the ball. Those are kinds of things that are happening now. But I don't think there's anything that they've saved. I do think they probably will learn and develop a more complex offense as they start to understand how to play together. So it may feel like there's some new stuff being introduced later, but I think that's more as a result of playing together, not withholding plays for the future.
This question is inspiring me. I'd like to track down someone as always, I don't know if this requires a synergy account or a second spectrum account, but whichever one it is that tracks the the after timeout plays. Because if you recall, Mike, a little bit of justice for Monty Williams. Monty had some. I know we always made fun of the pass it into the corner 3-point falling out of bounds play that never ever worked at the end of fourth quarters. Like, that was absolutely true. But in general, Monty had some pretty good success with the after timeout and the sideline out of bounds plays for the Suns over the past few years. And I would just be curious to see where Frank ranks in those right now, because that's one of the only real tangible data points that you can typically get for coaching specifically. It's a good way to measure coaching.
All right, last one here.
Hey Sam, hey Mike, hope you guys are well this week. It's Greg from France. Have a question this week regarding several options to judge and to choose maybe in it. If you were James Jones right now with the state of the Phoenix Suns as we speak, I give you 4 options and you only have one to pick amongst them. Either you get in the locker room and you scream at everybody to get some motivation out of them. You say goodbye to Frank Vogel. That's the second option. Third option, you get Devin Booker into your office, one-to-one conversation, and you try to bring some leadership out of him, or you keep everything intact and you leave time to this team to gather itself and get some game, actually. Hope you guys are well. Can't wait to listen to your answer and see you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Shout out Greg, as always. I think, wait, so
From
the
France.
4 options.
Mention it again, yeah.
From France. I think the 4 options were, number 1, okay, wait, we're James Jones. Number 1, you go into the locker room, you scream at everyone. I'm going to say that that's not going to be effective, so I'm going to cross that one out.
Yeah.
Number 2, fire Frank Vogel. I think, who was this that asked this question yesterday? We were talking with Kellen about it on our playback. Kellen was like, wanted to gauge where we were. But and also, by the way, just shout out to some of the wonderful people we've had on our playback streams recently, because we had David join us for a game recently, then we had Steven, then we had Kellen. None of this was planned ahead of time, so shout out to those guys for always joining us on those streams. But Kellen was asking us where we were at with Frank, and if we thought the front office was already sort of debating. I think the front office behind scenes is already debating about Frank Vogel's future with this organization, but I don't believe that they're actually going to do it at any point.
I'll say this just from my perspective. I think if he could be fired tomorrow, honestly, and I wouldn't be completely shocked. And
I wouldn't be completely shocked, but like, use your brain then. What are they going to do after?
I'm not saying it's the best choice.
There has to be a day after plan. Like, what happens next?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's really unpredictable it's really difficult to predict what Matt Ishbia is going to do, and that just wouldn't surprise me. So, third option, since we're going through him, Devin Booker, one-on-one conversation, trying to get some leadership out of him. And I think maybe you get him, right, Devin Booker, you take him to Draymond Green's yard and cry with him for a while, and maybe that's the key. I think just a real long, deep cry in Draymond Green's yard, and then maybe that'll work. And then the last one was just sort of give it more time to develop. And
so I think if you're James Jones, you give it more time. As in, what day is it today? Gotta check it's January 9th. You got a month. You got a month to give it more time, and if it's still not working, then you have the trade deadline. I think it's equally interesting to consider what would you do from the perspective of Matt Ishbia, because James Jones is kind of chained with regards to what exactly, there's only so much he can do. He can control the roster. He can make some minor moves at the deadline. He doesn't have too many assets. Matt Ishbia is the guy who actually has the power to blow all of this up at any moment,
including James Jones.
Including James Jones. Yes, he could end James Jones's career, quite literally, depending on, kind of his own whims. So, if Matt Ishbia had a one-on-one conversation with Devin Booker, would Devin Booker actually take him seriously? No, I don't think so. So I don't think that would be a productive conversation either. I don't think there's all that much that either of these guys can do.
I think it would be hard to cry in Matt Ishbia's yard, because I think there's a theme park back there. based on what I've seen about his house in Michigan. But yeah, I think
Are we a little bit? No, go ahead. Sorry, I don't want to.
I think the best option, honestly, is you have I think a conversation with Devin Booker just to try to get him right makes a lot of sense. But I'd be surprised if that hadn't already happened.
The fifth option that wasn't outlined here. Are we a little surprised there hasn't been a players only meeting yet? Do we think that could
that's
come at some
interesting.
point?
Who would call that? Bradley Beal?
Bradley Beal?
Maybe it's just because they haven't played together enough, and they're like, we're
it's
gonna
kind
have
of
a players
a weird
only
question
meeting.
in and of itself. You know, I could see Bradley Beal. I could see Yusuf Nurkic, like not
Eric Gordon. That's the guy.
Like it needs to be a council of elders, right? So if Bradley Beal, Eric Gordon, no, I'm serious. If Bradley Beal, Eric Gordon, and Yusuf Nurkic all come together and say, all right, let's figure this shit out, the rest of the guys would listen to them, I think.
And Kevin Durant and Devin Booker play Call of Duty in the corner while they talk.
Yes. Yeah, that's sort of part of the problem.
Yeah. No, I think there's a lot of good options, and I think the fact that we have to talk about them just it really demonstrates all of the issues that the team is running into right now. But excellent question from Greg. Thank you for giving us a call all the way from France. If you'd like to give us a call, 480, almost said 1-800. 480-420-6553 is our number. You can anytime, day and night, leave us a message. We'll try to get to as many as possible on the podcast. We appreciate you all for listening to this one. Hopefully we'll come back later. You know, we got a
after
Patreon
a
one.
Lakers
after
win.
Lakers after a Lakers TNT
Lakers
game.
win.
Yeah.
Coming later this week.
So we'll record a Patreon one after that. If you'd like to listen, I think you could find it. But yes, we'll be back very soon. Appreciate you all for listening.